Hello everybody, my name is Holly Simmons. I am the owner of SheLovesMe, which is a flower shop based in DC. This is not my flower shop, this is actually my home. And I'm so excited to invite you in today to show you some basics on flower arranging. And I'm so excited to be partnering with Hoegaarden so that we can bring this to you. By now you should have received your Hoegaarden cherry blossom bouquet. This has everything you're going to need today. So once you receive this, you'll notice that it's in 3 separate parts. So you're going to want to go ahead and divide the 3 separate parts, lay them out on your table, run some water, some fresh cold water in your clean vase, and we can get started. So when I am designing, whether it's a flower crown or a bridal bouquet or a centerpiece, I always keep a little rhyme in my head, and it helps me, as I'm putting elements together. And that rhyme is, every arrangement should have a spiller, a filler, and a thriller. So if you haven't figured it out by now, that's what those 3 separate bunches are in your bouquet. So what I like to do is I always like to start with my spiller. So spillers are anything that adds movement to your arrangement. Typically it's your greens. So today you'll be working with Floral, which is actually lemon leaf. It's a florist's best friend because it lasts a long time and it's always got a really nice, beautiful shape. It's really nice for containing bouquets and just holding in flowers if you want to give them a little bit more structure. It's really awesome. So we've got some floral in your bunch. You've also got some tree fern. Tree fern is nice and fluffy. Also another good use for florists because it does take up a lot of space and it's not too expensive. And lastly, we have one of my favorite greens, and that is seeded eucalyptus. So as I mentioned, these are what I would consider a spiller. Technically, you can take 12 roses, stick them in a vase and call it an arrangement, but it's going to be lacking a little bit of interesting factor. It's going to be a little stiff, very one note. So by incorporating spillers, again, we're just adding some movement, some nice organic shapes. So with your spiller, what you want to do is, with a pair of scissors, that's fine. I have my clippers. If you've got something stronger, that's great too, but your regular household scissors will work. What you want to do is you want to cut your spiller at an angle, at about a 45-degree angle. And you probably already do that. You've probably heard to cut flowers at an angle, but maybe you aren't sure why. The reason you do it is to maximize the surface area. You want as much surface for water to be sucked up and keep the plants nice and healthy. So we're just going to start with putting some spiller in our vase. As a general rule for height, how long to keep your stem, I try to keep anything I incorporate into the vase about the same size as the vase. So imagine this doubled. So I try to keep it about that height. That being said, if you want to go high, if you want to be more expressive, don't let me hold you back. It's always easy to trim stems later. It's more difficult to add length to them. So my general recommendation is to keep them a little bit longer to start, and then you can have a little bit more flexibility. So already this is kind of cool. I love this. I would put this on my dining room table when I'm hosting guests for dinner. But let's keep going. Let's keep adding a little bit more. So I mentioned in our spillers, we've also got some salal. So salal, again, is great because it's got these really broad leaves that take up a lot of space, and it's just got a really vibrant green. I love working with it. So same deal with the salal. We're just going to cut that at an angle, about the same height, and put it in. And I want you to keep in mind that this is a work in progress. If along the way you get frustrated or you don't think it's turning out the way you want it to, just keep going. The more we add, the more life it's going to bring to our vase and just make it look a little bit more beautiful. So I'm going to add a couple stems of salal. I am taking Hoegaarden breaks, which you should as well. I'm super excited about their new cherry blossom variety. It's a limited edition beer, so if you can find it, grab it. I've had a hard time finding it. I think it's selling out just about everywhere, so keep an eye out for it. It's got really light fruity notes. It's delicious, and it's a great companion to flower arranging. I'll admit that sometimes if I drink a little bit, I get a little looser, and sometimes it looks pretty good. So here we go with some of our spillers. I am going to add just a couple stems of tree fern as well. These I'm going to cut a little shorter because they're so fluffy. They look nice, kind of tucked in a little bit more, filling out a little bit of the space in the middle. And just a note about where I get my flowers. So during the spring and summer and the warmer months, I work exclusively with local growers. They just have the best product. The smells are amazing. And of course, I love supporting local. Otherwise, I work with an importer in Silver Spring, and they have also a really great product too. You can really just go to Trader Joe's, pick up an arrangement, and have a little fun with that too. It doesn't matter where they come from, as long as you're just having fun and being expressive. So I think we're just about done with our spillers. I'd love to move on to our fillers. So whereas our spillers added movement, our fillers are going to add texture. It's going to further develop that arrangement, make it a little bit more interesting, give it some life. So some fillers that you've got today, the white fluffy stuff, this is called Status. This is grown locally. It's amazing. It lasts forever. You can even dry it once you're done. It's just a really good filler to work with. I've also got some wax flowers. Wax flowers are very much alive. They're just called wax flowers. They're likewise very fluffy and very sweet. I just love incorporating wax flowers into arrangements, and I love them too because one stem is really fruitful. So that's when you're a florist, you're working priced by stem, so you want to find stems that are very prolific and have a lot on them. So that's a good one, wax flower. We've also got something called yogurt berries. I think these are really sweet. You want to talk about texture, these are so plump and lush, and I love how they have just little hints of pink and white, and I really love these to work with. They always add a little wow factor. So we're gonna start working in some of our fillers. Let's start with our berries. I like the way they smell too. So you may notice that I just stripped the leaves off of this. That's another step when you're flower arranging. It's called processing. So similar to how we kind of trimmed that stem at a 45-degree angle, you also want to strip any leaves that could sit in water. Basically, when you're processing flowers, is you're cleaning them up, you're getting them ready to go in the water, and it helps extend the life of your flowers. If you've ever left an arrangement in a vase for a couple days and maybe forgot to rinse the water or swap out the water, you'll notice a really gross smell. What's happening is the leaves are sitting in the water, they're growing bacteria, it's infecting the water, which is then infecting the flowers. So, by trimming them, by stripping the leaves, we're just keeping them nice and fresh and clean, and we're gonna help extend the life of our arrangement by at least a couple days actually. So with our fillers, let's see if I can move this over for you. We want to, again, keep these a little shorter. Being fillers, we don't want them sticking out really far. We want them kind of tucked in a little bit. So I kind of just measure them. I hold them up against my vase and I can see about where they're gonna fall, and then I trim them there. So let's see, let's stick these in. Nice. I'm gonna go even shorter on the next one. I think this is even a little bit tall. I'm gonna leave it that way, and then I can, again, assess at the end. I'm the daughter of a seamstress, so I know very well that you should measure twice and cut once. That's a very important lesson I've learned. So let's grab another, and I'm just gonna cut it a little bit shorter. And I chose a variety of pink flowers for us today, in honor of Hoegaarden's Cherry Blossom Beer. I just thought it'd be cute, and pink is one of my favorite colors, but you can also tell that I like a lot of color, so I don't discriminate. So here we go so far, looking beautiful, looking nice. Gonna work in some of those wax flowers that I mentioned. And wax flowers have a life of their own. They're gonna spray everywhere. Don't make the mistake of trying to force them to look a certain way. That's just a good life lesson for a lot of reasons, but especially in flowers, you kind of want to work with the shape and the direction of everything as it is. So I'm just going to stick that right in the middle there. Beautiful. This one is kind of bugging me. I mentioned it was a little too long. I'm going to go ahead and trim that now. I can just tell. Put it right back in the same spot, but oh, that feels so much better. Okay, and as you're arranging, you want to avoid something that I call lines. Basically, you'll notice how this is a little higher than this, which is a little lower than this, which is a little higher than this. You don't want to create an even line. You want to create a little asymmetry. It just mimics nature. You know, nothing in nature is perfectly symmetrical. So, you know, and I tend to like things that are a little bit more organic, a little bit more wild. So by keeping them stacked in all different heights, I think it looks really pretty already. Again, like we could stop here, but I'm a maximalist. I'm gonna keep going. Let's grab some of that status that I mentioned. So your status, you may find that it has a lot going on one stem. Don't be afraid to break it up. You know, maybe you want a short little piece, feel free to just kind of snap them off. And then just again, measuring them, keeping in mind that asymmetry rule that I suggested. Just gonna stick them in. That looks nice. This one's a little taller, I think, putting it towards the back. And just another thing to keep in mind as you're designing, keep in mind where this is going to go. If this is going to be in the middle of a table, you'll want to design it 360. You'll want it to look nice from every angle so that no matter where someone's sitting, they can get a nice view. If it's going to be against a wall or on a bookshelf, you know, you want to stack it towards the front. I will say that's definitely the easier way to design. So that's how I'm doing it today. So you can see I've kind of got a little bit taller height in the back and we're kind of slowly going lower. Beautiful, love this. Next, it is time for our thrillers. So we've done our spillers, we've done our fillers. Now we're gonna do our thrillers. And you can probably deduce from the name that our thrillers are any flowers that have wow factor. They're thrilling. They are the eye-catching part of the arrangement. They typically tend to be more expensive as well. So you really wanna do your best to highlight them. And that's what everything else that we've put into our arrangement is meant to do. It's meant to serve as kind of a backdrop for the star of the show. So in your fillers, what you've got to work with is something called stock. Stock is a great flower. It is so fragrant. It's got like a licorice hint. I just love the way it smells, and they last a long time. So with our stock, again, you're gonna wanna strip your leaves. I know it might feel like it's hurting the flower or killing it, but it's actually diverting resources to the most important part. So rather than taking care of those leaves and giving water to those leaves, everything's gonna go to the main event. So you've got 3 stems of stock. You've also got 2 ranunculus, which are just the sweetest little flower. These are grown locally at a farm I love. They're called Butterbee out in Maryland. And ranunculus are just the most precious. They have hundreds of little petals, and they create this gorgeous little head, this round little bud that I think is just so pretty. There is one thing to note about ranunculus is because of all those petals, their heads tend to be really heavy. At the same time, their stems are hollow. So a lot of times when I purchase ranunculus, what happens is the stems snap off. It's just too heavy for them, or you know, in transport they get knocked off. But I'm going to show you a little trick in a little bit, how to reverse that, just in case it ever happens to you. But moving on, we've got our ranunculus, and we've got our carnation, which, hold your judgment before you say anything. I'm going to show you a trick on how to make these look almost peony-like. It's interesting about carnations and other flowers like baby's breath that kind of have a bad rap. They, you know, they have a negative connotation, or people are just kind of like anti some of these flowers. And I think the reason that is because they're so widely used, because they're inexpensive, because carnations and baby's breath last forever. You find them in a lot of drugstore bouquets or, grocery store bouquets, weddings from the 80s, things that we don't necessarily think are very in vogue. But what's interesting is because they're so affordable, because they're so readily available, florists and floral artists are doing magical things with baby's breath and carnations. I'm talking entire walls, clouds made of baby's breath, spray painting them gold and putting them in arrangements. It's just wild. People are so inventive, so creative. I love it. And again, I'm going to show you a trick in a little bit on how to make these look much more expensive, much fuller. But it's just interesting in general how, similar to interior design or fashion or even food, there are trends, and the floral world is no exception. Carnations, baby's breath, like I mentioned, are kind of having a comeback slowly as more and more artists do interesting things with them. So, don't rule anything out, keep an open mind. If you don't like it, you can also not include it, give it to a friend, whatever you want to do with it. And then lastly, what you've got in your Hoegaarden cherry blossom bouquet is cherry blossoms. So these are really special. Yours probably have not blossomed quite yet, but I did want to just show you one that's in full bloom. They're gorgeous. Again, they've got these crazy wild shapes, very unpredictable, and I just love how they impact the arrangement and how they make it look. So let's get started putting some of our thrillers in. So I am going to start with the stalk just because it's the fluffiest, it takes up the most space, so it's going to give us a good sense of where we'll have pockets to fill in later. So with the stalk, it's already naturally pretty tall, so you'll want to maybe keep it a little shorter than you. And I'm just going to put it right in there. So pretty. You've got 3, so let's keep going with the stalk. Got another one. Trim those leaves. It's kind of the funnest part. Give it a snip. And I'm going to put this one in closer to the front. Lovely. Let's grab one more. Perfect. And I do try to design in odd numbers. When you put 2 of the same thing next to each other, what happens, whether you realize it or not, is your eye automatically judges them. It determines which one is bigger or better. So when you incorporate 3 of one thing, it just kind of breaks it up and makes it a little bit more unpredictable. It's called the rule of 3s. That's how people plate food. It's how, it impacts a lot of different design elements. Graphic design, art, you name it. Lovely, that's our stalk. Now, we can work in some of our ranunculus, and I mentioned I was going to show you a trick. So, what I want to show you is, let's say you have a big wedding. Let's say you're a florist, and you have a huge wedding, and you promised your bride 3 ranunculus in her bouquet, and one of them snaps, which is inevitable. Again, these are such delicate flowers that it's bound to happen. Instead of throwing this away, what you can do is take some floral wire. This is a lifesaver. Take some floral wire. I'm going to say about 10 inches worth. Give it a snip. Feed the end of the wire into the ranunculus. You probably can't see this from that far away, but just trust me. Make a little curve, make a little hook, and pull it down. And what you've got is a whole new stem. So obviously this isn't being hydrated, this isn't getting water, so this wouldn't work for any arrangement that you want to last a long time. But again, if you're doing a wedding or like a one-day event, this is a great way to save product and make your dollar go a little further. It's also helpful if you're doing boutonnieres because now you can contort the neck and it's a little bit more front facing. It just gives you a lot more flexibility once you've got it on a wire. So I'm just going to set this aside and work in our second ranunculus now. I would say ranunculus only behind peony. Peonies are the most popular flower. I think they're going to be here to stay for a while, but ranunculus is definitely not far behind. We get a lot of requests for ranunculus at the shop. So there's my first sweet little one. Include that one. Their necks are a little crazy too. They're always like a little wavy, and I love that. I tend to let them just kind of go over to the side. Every arrangement I make, I try to have a runaway flower. It's just one that won't stay in place, one won't listen. I like the fact that it's just kind of doing its own thing. I support that. And then we've got our carnation, which again, I mentioned that I wanted to show you a fun trick. Let's find one. So here you go. Carnations, when you get them, are typically really closed. They're really tight. They aren't the most lush or the prettiest, I'll be honest. But what you can do is they have these little ridges underneath the petals. What I like to do is I peel back, not totally off, I don't peel it all the way off, I just kind of peel back every other one of these ridges. And then that gives me a little bit more breathing room in the carnation. So then I just kind of gently peel back some of these petals, open it up, let it form its truest, fullest expression. And now it's almost a completely different flower. And you know, every bride I work with says, absolutely no carnations. I don't want any carnations in my bouquet. And I always sneak some in because it's a great filler. Even though, you know, it's considered a thriller today, you can also just stick it at the bottom of something and it fills up space, again, without taking up a lot of money, a lot in the budget. And when you do a trick like this, if you put it next to a peony or a ranunculus, you know, you don't even notice it. It's just there to support. So, you know, sorry brides, I'm gonna put a carnation in your bouquet. You just gotta deal with it. So even with the carnation, I stripped those leaves. And then this, I'm gonna cut a little shorter. Like so. And tuck it in. See, you don't even really notice it, but it still takes up space and it gives the appearance of a more lush, beautiful arrangement. I'm loving the way this looks. Lastly, what we want to put in is our cherry blossom. So let's find one. This is a nice one. And this is gonna, again, just do its own thing. We're not gonna try to incorporate it too heavy in any sort of way. I like that the stems go every which way. So I'm gonna cut it there. I am gonna trim some of these off just to make it easier. And I'm just gonna stick it right in the middle. This guy needs a little breathing room, like so. And there you go. There's a nice, beautiful arrangement. You've learned some design principles. You've learned some specific flower varieties. We're in the thick of ranunculus season, so you might even see some around town. Everybody will also get a care card today, so you can read that on your own. But just real briefly, you want to keep your flowers cold. There's a reason when you go to the supermarket, you see them in the freezer or in the coolers. It's essentially slowing down the aging process. The whole arrangement has to be cold. It's not like you can just throw a couple ice cubes in the water. It's the whole petals, the stems, everything should be chilled. You also want to keep your water very, very clean. I change my water every single day. Think of the water as air for your flowers. So you want it to be fresh, clean, you know, easy to take up, and just chilled is nice. You know, just run the cold water from your sink. That's totally fine. And you'll also get some flower food today. There's a lot of information online about tricks and ways to keep your flowers fresh for longer, like a shot of Sprite or a little aspirin, or I've even read to put a nickel in the water. But the flower food is definitely the best way that I found. The combination of flower food and chilling your flowers is gonna make them last for days to come. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this brought some joy to your day, some nature into your home. And thank you to Hoegaarden again for making this possible. And wish you all a happy spring, and would love to invite you to the shop as soon as I'm able, once this is all over and we can be together again. Thank you so much.